Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, about 6 months ago or so, I'll try to find the video and link it and leave a card up here somewhere. I did a video telling you all that there is a looming rice shortage. And what that means mainly for us Westerners, i.e. people that live in the United States, Europe, the Western nations, what that means really for us is that the price of rice is going to go up because there's going to be a higher demand with less inventory, right? So more demand, less inventory, the price of rice will go up. And that's for us. However, what that will mean for about 3.5 billion people around the world, or roughly about half of the people in the world, is that their main source of nutrition is going to get so expensive that many people will starve, right? And those types of videos are like this one that I'm making right here, which will encompass a lot more than just rice, ladies and gentlemen. So I will be leaving chapters on this video so that you can skip to whatever section you like. But most of everything that I'm talking about today is actionable intel to let you know, hey, listen, this is either getting close to happening or it's happening right now. The time has come. Are you prepared for this? Have you been preparing for this? So we're going to have the price of rice, one of the main staples of more than half of the people, or around half the people in the world, is going to go up to levels where people are going to starve. Global rice shortage looms, and it's set to be the biggest in decades. Rice is the primary food source for over half of the globe's population. A new report reveals that rice production this year could be at its lowest in decades. Not only at its lowest in decades, ladies and gentlemen, but in a time where inflation is already ravaging many countries that are like developing countries, that are poorer countries. And now on top of that, to hyper inflate the price of their main staple, there's going to be lots of problems. The deficit will be a major headache for countries relying on grain imports. At the global level, the most evident impact of the global rice deficit has been, and still is, decade-high rice prices. Sliding rice production in China, the US, and Europe is already causing grain prices to increase for about 3.5 billion people. And here they say that given that rice is a staple food commodity across multiple markets in Asia, prices are a major determinant of food price inflation and food security, particularly for the poorest households. Some of you may be asking yourselves, AP, you don't even eat rice anymore. What do you care about this? Well, ladies and gentlemen, only because I personally can't eat rice anymore. And for those of you that don't know, I was diagnosed with diabetes about 3 or 4 months ago now. But just for those of you that don't know, it doesn't mean that I am opposed to other people eating it. Like I said, almost half of the world's population lives on rice. Now, what are they going to do? Remember that statistics that I've often shared with you, that once a household has to spend 40% or more of their income on only food, that they start doing bad things. Hart said that this year's global shortfall would be about 8.7 million tons, the largest global rice deficit since the year 2003 and 4. There's a short supply of rice as a result of the ongoing war in Ukraine, of course, and as well as bad weather in rice-producing economies like China and Pakistan. And if you all remember, China and Pakistan both had really bad floods, and Pakistan was really, really bad because it pretty much knocked out, I think it was between 70 and 90% of their entire food production for last year. Think about that. Think about that when you're thinking about, we don't need to prepare. Look at Pakistan. They lost about 70 to 90% of their food production for the entire year from one natural event, ladies and gentlemen. The second half of last year, swaths of farmland in the world's largest rice producer, China, were plagued by heavy summer monsoons, rains, and floods. The accumulated rainfalls in China's major hub of rice production was the second highest in the last 20 years. And similarly, in Pakistan, which represents about 7.6% of global rice trade, 7.6% may not sound like a lot, but when you're talking about millions of tons, it is a lot, ladies and gentlemen. They saw annual production plunge by 31% year over year due to severe flooding last year, even worse than initially expected. And listen to this, rice is a vulnerable crop and has the highest probability of simultaneous crop loss during El Nino events, which means that the probability of it having a year over year, devastating crop loss is pretty high. What's the point? Get prepped up, ladies and gentlemen. We've been talking about this for years, right? Yes, the boy that cried wolf. Well, guess what, though? The wolf is actually starting to get closer to your door. So if you eat rice, anything, whatever it is that you eat, get it now. Put it away for long term so that you can have it when you need it, right? Because think about this. Times are not getting any easier. Inflation, even though the government says inflation is at what, 5%, I think is the last that I heard. Do you really think that inflation is at 5%? Ladies and gentlemen, do you really think that? If you really think that inflation is at 5%, then God bless you, because it means that you're doing really well. You're doing really well in life. But if you've looked around, if you've taken a look at your shopping cart when you go shopping, goodness gracious, I did a video here a while back, I don't know, a week, maybe two weeks ago, where I showed you what about $260 bought me at Costco. And it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't anything crazy. I think I had a couple of packs of, I think it was ground beef maybe, or a couple of packs of roasts that weren't that expensive. Actually, they were like $5.49 a pound or something like that. But then just a few other things, and it came out to like $260. I remember when Mrs. Alaska Prepper and myself were first married. And I remember that we would fill our cupboards, I mean full, for like $100. And yes, this was 32 years ago or so. But we would fill our cupboards full for like $100. Can you do that now? You'd be lucky if you could fill one cabinet in your kitchen. Another thing that we need to prepare for, ladies and gentlemen, is to keep inflation from stealing our wealth. That is the one thing that inflation is meant to do, to steal your wealth. I actually stopped by the coin shop yesterday, and I would show it to you if I had it. I stopped by to buy that gold. Remember on a previous video I told you, listen, I tried to place an order for some beef, for a side of beef, and not only did they limit me to just one side instead of a full cow, but they said there's a 1.5 year waiting period. So what I did was I took the money that I was going to use to buy that cow, and I went and bought gold with it. And I met a young man there. His name is Jesse. So Jesse, if you're watching this, shout out to you, my friend. I could tell that he was making his first precious metals purchase. He was purchasing a little bit of silver. And once he made his purchase, he purchased, and Jesse, I'm going to give everyone your business, all right? He purchased 3 ounces of silver. So I took the opportunity to have a friendly conversation with him. And anyway, so I'm talking to him about silver. I'm talking to him about the dollar and all this kind of stuff. And pretty much I left it with, listen, don't go crazy. Slow and steady wins the race. Because after everything I told him about the dollar and about how it's fake and all these things that you've heard me talk all through the years about the dollar and the Federal Reserve. But anyways, after that little talk, about 20 minutes or so of talking, he goes back to Dick and says, hey, you know what? I still have a little bit of spending money. Let me get another 4 ounces. And I was like, there you go, man. Just slow and steady. Don't go crazy. If you have it to spend, beautiful. If you don't, just budget it in and do a little dollar cost average. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, I'm on the internet, so I have to say I'm not a financial advisor, but that is what I do. Dollar cost averaging, unless it's a special occasion, like the money that I have put away for those cows that I want to buy, or that cow that I want to buy, to put in my freezer, that is going to go in an envelope and it's going to be earmarked for those cows. Why? Because I know that by the time that my name comes up on that list in 1.5 years or so, that's going to be a little more than what they just quoted me today. Right? I don't think they're going to be able to maintain those prices. But here it says, Mr. Von Greyer says forecasting the gold price is a mug's game, meaning that it doesn't really matter what the gold's price is 5 or 10 years from now. What matters is what can it buy you. What can gold buy you, ladies and gentlemen? That's what matters. What can the silver that you get today buy you 10 years from now? Just like a silver quarter 70 years ago or 60 years ago could buy you 1 gallon of gas, 1 silver quarter today, if you take it and sell it to a coin shop, is going to be able to buy you 1 gallon of gas. That's what really matters. Most investors are totally ignorant of the purpose of gold or its historical significance. After all, gold is the only money that has survived in history, but virtually nobody is aware of this vital information. Why? Because they want to keep us from the truth in order so that we can stay good slaves, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't that what it's all about when the government is involved? That is why only 0.5% of global financial assets are invested in gold. Still, most people put their trust in paper money. I believe this is true, what I'm just about to tell you, but correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that like 401ks and, you know, hedge funds and stuff like that that manage retirement accounts, I believe they're not allowed to invest your money in real physical gold. I think they can, you know, invest your money in like ETFs and things like that, but I don't think they're allowed to do it in real physical gold. And that's because the government knows that the king is strolling around the courtyard without any clothes. All right, we all know it. It's just nobody in an authoritative position, like someone in the government, someone in the media, has stepped out and said, hey, listen, the gold market is like a king without the clothes on. Right? Look, it doesn't have any clothes. You know, no one's said it so that the majority of people can hear it. So we continue going on with the facade that every contract that is put out there by the LBMA, by this, whatever, COMEX, you know, whatever these places are that manipulate the price of gold, that every contract that's put out there has the equal amount of ounces in gold or silver backing it up, when in fact it's just a fraction of that, but I digress. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before I continue, listen, if you have excess wealth, all right, that you want to protect, I have 3 links that have to do with precious metals. The first one, in my opinion, is for that person that's starting a stack, that wants to keep everything that they have in a little box somewhere in the back 40 in a deep hole, and that's SD Bullion. And I do believe that they are still debt-free. That's one of the reasons why I worked with them in the past, is because they're debt-free. Another one that I highly recommend is ITM Trading with Miss Lynette Zhang. Now, ITM Trading is for people that have a lot of money, in my opinion. I believe that if you work with them, you have to have at least $5,000 or more. Why? Because the margins on precious metals is very small. But what I really like about ITM Trading is that they educate you and they do not pressure sell you. So you can call them a dozen times to ask questions, to ask them how they would strategize on your holdings of precious metals, how you can diversify. But you can ask them all the questions you want, and they will never pressure sell you. Their main goal is to educate people, and then by doing that, people decide that, hey, these guys have taken the time to educate me, so I think that they're pretty honest, and I want to do business with them. But again, if you don't want to do business with them, you don't have to. But educate yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Educate yourselves, all right? The third one that I deal with that has to do with precious metals, you see them sponsor my video every once in a while, about once a week or so, and that's Genesis Gold Group. Now, Genesis Gold Group, you can also buy physical from them, but they also offer where you can convert your IRA to precious metals. Is that one of the things that I like to promote a lot? Not really, because I like to say, just like Ms. Lynette Zhang does at ITM Trading, I like to say, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. However, I do understand that there are some people that are in a position where they just cannot. They don't want to go ahead and take the loss of cashing out a 401k, the 10% that you pay plus the tax that you're going to have to pay on the other amount that you take out. So they would rather just, instead of losing all that money to taxes and to penalties, they would rather just put it over into a gold or silver IRA and then go ahead and have that gold or silver put in the depository. And that's what Genesis Gold Group does. So I understand that that's what they do. I understand that some people are not ready to give up, you know, all the gains that they've made in the form of a penalty or in the form of taxes. So that's why I work with them as well. I like to have as many options as possible. But remember this, ladies and gentlemen, even that I have those 3 trusted sites under the description of my videos, you should always check 5 or 6 before you decide on one. All right, so check more than what you're given. That way you can make a good decision for yourself. Since governments and central banks are the biggest supporters of gold by continuously destroying the value of paper money, gold ownership is a must. And here he's just being a little bit funny, saying, hey, listen, governments support gold and silver, I would say in this case, by destroying the value of paper money, because by destroying the value of paper money is what makes the nominal price of gold and silver go up. The everything bubble is likely turned into the everything collapse. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you know that I have to agree with. With all the bubble assets declining between 75 and 95% in real terms. Get ready for that. The biggest collapse will obviously be the $300 trillion debt market. What have we talked about in the past? I've always talked about this, and go take a look at Mr. Gregory Mannarino. He's on the side that the real, and Mr. Johnny Bravo as well. They're on the side that when this all collapses, it's going to be the debt market. And what's happening right now with the banks, it has to do with the debt market. But before this debt collapse, Western governments and central banks will have drowned financial markets in what my colleague Matt P. calls mouse click money. Meaning what? Hyperinflation, ladies and gentlemen. And they will wear out many batteries on mice before this is finished. So what they're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is once the markets crash, they're going to start putting money into the system like crazy, like we've never seen, because this time it's not like 2008, ladies and gentlemen. It's not only going to take a few $1 trillion. For those of you that don't know, 2008 was not $700 billion. It was a total of close to 20 trillion that they didn't tell us about. Right, this one is going to take tens and tens and tens of trillions of dollars. I mean, maybe 100 or 200 trillion. What's that going to do to inflation? It's going to be epic. Bank runs are no longer made by depositors queuing at the door, but by spreading the news in minutes via social media. That's true. To stop an instant collapse of the system, the central banks had to backstop everything. So we are back to bailouts again, and that's what the banks are doing, bailouts. And what we have seen so far is just the sheer beginning. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be one of those catalysts that pushes us up to higher and higher inflation and the devaluement of the dollar even further. 5 Arab states plus Iran among 19 nations are ready to join the BRICS nations. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Algeria, Egypt, Bahrain, and Iran have formally asked to join the BRICS groups of nations as it prepares to hold its annual summit in South Africa. 13 countries have formally asked to join, and another 6 have asked informally. We are getting applications to join every day, they say. Earlier this month, Bloomberg revealed that BRICS is expected to soon surpass the US-led G7 states in economic growth expectations. BRICS member states account for over 40% of the global population and around a quarter of the global GDP, which is about the same as ours. So if the BRICS nations get together, they're going to be a competitor against the dollar, a serious competitor against the dollar, ladies and gentlemen. And they say here that the interest from global South nations to join the bloc comes at a time when more and more governments move away from the US dollar. And they finish this off by saying the greenback has become more unreliable for dollarized economies due to rising interest rates regulated by the Federal Reserve and the bank's weaponization of the dollar through financial sanctions. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, because JP Morgan CEO says the system is very sound. And this was after the second largest bank failure in U.S. history, right? The gout of that, the gout of that person saying, hey, don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, the system is fine. But the thing is, I believe that he meant it. I believe that he meant that the system is fine. Fine for you if you're in the club. And if you all remember, I talked about a couple of live streams ago. I said, somebody asked me, what do you think is going to happen with the banks in the end? I said, I think with the banks in the end, what's going to happen is that the smaller ones are going to fail, and we're going to end up with 5 or 6 or who knows, 7 or 8 big banks governing everyone in the United States. All right, ladies and gentlemen, look at what's happening now. All of these smaller banks are failing, and who's gupping it up? With your money, with our taxpayer money, these guys are. We need large, successful banks in the largest economy, Diamond says, proclaiming that this is nothing like 2008 or 9. Well, he is right. It's so much larger than 2008 and 9, so much worse than 2008 or 9. Diamond's closing comments were the most prophetic, stating that they support community banks and that banks will consolidate. Listen to that. What did I just say? Banks will consolidate. making it a monopoly even worse than what it is now. I know the banking system right now is not great, but the more small banks you have, the better it is for us. Of course they will. Once the banks are pushed into FDIC hands and assets scooped by JP Morgan with government backstop, meaning that all of these banks that are being taken over by the FDIC are being sold to JP Morgan, or at least this one was, but that's going to be what happens with all of the other banks. They're going to be sold to bigger banks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for the bank run to cripple them all and then buy them all for cents on the dollar, with the FDIC keeping the toxic crap. And that's pretty much what it translates to when the FDIC takes over a bank and then turns it over to one of these bigger banks. And the last one that should leave you feeling pretty good, ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. banking system is sound. Don't worry, you have nothing to worry about. Don't worry about getting silver. Don't worry about getting gold. Don't worry about protecting the wealth that you've worked for your entire life. Everything is going to be okay. But is it? Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen keeps insisting that the banking system is sound. No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not stressing out. I'm not going through articles that are going to stress me out like they did before. I'm trying to get articles to read to you that have actionable intel. And this is actionable intel. This information where all of these bigwigs keep telling us everything is going to be all right. This is actionable intel. It should tell you, I need to prep. Do you really think that these people are not prepared? Do you think that Janet Yellen doesn't have a getaway place, a bug out location? You don't think she has a storage of long-term foods? Man, ladies and gentlemen, these people that run these organizations, like the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, and the government, that can see everything from a 36,000 foot view, that can see down, those are the people that are the most prepared. They just never talk about it. Why? Because why would they want a population that is prepared? A population that is prepared is one that can resist. Why would they want that? I know this was a really long video and I really appreciate you sticking around for it. I hope that you used the chapters if you wanted to skip from section to section. Other than that, have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for all of your support. We will talk to you tomorrow. God bless every one of you. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.